Welcome to this week's edition of Good Books Radio, the first program of our new year, 2016, and actually our 10th year on the air. So glad to be here for a decade now and glad to have you back for this new year. We have a great book to begin our year with by the famous Brad Taylor, and the book is called The Forgotten Soldier, a Pike Logan thriller. We're going to talk about that book in just a minute with Brad, but before we get to that little business, this program is underwritten by audiobooks.com. As always, if you miss our program here today, you can hear the podcast, or if you want to rehear it, you can hear the podcast on our Facebook page, Good Books Radio, or on our Google channel, Good Books Radio. You can listen again to your heart's delight. Brad, welcome. How are you, sir?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So you're up in Dallas this morning, or Plano?
I am, yeah. We did the book launch last night here in Plano.
Great. Glad that you came home to Texas to do
Definitely.
this. Now, you're from Houston, Conroe area?
Yeah, I grew up in Conroe.
Okay. And why did you leave Texas?
Well, I left Texas because basically I joined the military. I went to the University of Texas, was commissioned, and then ended up in the military living all over the world.
So how is it that you went to that bastion of liberalism in Austin and you ended up being, the conservative that you are?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I remember back then the big thing was apartheid, and they had all the protests, and it was just like they had shanty towns built there on the square, and they kept trying to get rid of them. And now I look at it, we went back and visited UT, and Austin, I did a signing in Austin, and it's definitely liberal.
Oh, yeah. Well,
when you're a kid, you don't really realize what that is. Nowadays, I'm like, holy moly, this place is going out of control.
Yes, it's a much different Texas in some ways than more, I guess, like the rest of America, kind of divided, split up.
Yeah.
I know there are people who they talk about Texas seceding, but they want to leave Austin behind.
Yeah. I haven't heard that one. That would make sense.
But actually, your background, you might not like this comparison, but I'm sure with your long history in the military, A&M is where we have, I guess, our greatest number of military people in Texas that come out of universities in Texas. A&M, I know in World War II, they contributed more soldiers than anybody, right?
Yeah, they did. Actually, A&M used to be a full military school. My last, just so you know, my last assignment was teaching at the Citadel, which is a senior military college, and there's only 7 of them in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we used to compete with A&M every year for the number one producer of lieutenants. The 3 years I was there was from the Citadel, outside of West Point, obviously.
Wow.
But when we say that, we'd probably say we're the number one, but we were always, it was like one shy of A&M.
So, and at the Citadel, you taught courses like, I think one of the course or specializations, was it irregular warfare, or is that right?
Yeah, asymmetrical. Basically what happens is you're teaching at a senior military college. Everybody's required to take ROTC. Right. But that doesn't mean everybody's getting a commission. Right. So I would literally have a class of 60 people, because everybody would take Army ROTC. Navy ROTC requires you to do math. Air Force ROTC requires you to learn Boyle's Law. Army ROTC required you to go shoot a gun, so they would all come to my class. And I looked at it as a kind of an opportunity, so I created my own schedule of what I would teach, because they're all going to be citizens of the United States. And so I geared it towards, it's basically 50-50. 50% of my classes would be, okay, this is what I'm supposed to teach for ROTC. 50% would be, this is what you people need to know as Americans.
Do you have a deep history in the history of warfare?
I do. Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, if you're talking Peloponnesian War and that kind of stuff, obviously I've read about it. Right. But I'm much more focused on irregular warfare from, from Malaysia, that kind of the modern era of insurgencies, terrorism, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. How has, of course, this makes you an exceptionally fine novelist because, you've lived it, and the old saying, write what you know. But I think you point out that when you actually get to writing, that even you must do research because you come into contact with all that you don't know.
Oh, certainly. I mean, the world's always turning, and I still do security consulting, so I keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on around the world. Mm-hmm. But even small tactical things, like I'm writing a scene with a guy with an AK-47, I can't remember. Does that thing, when it finishes firing, does it stop on an open bolt or a closed bolt? Things that I have to go back and research.
So do you go out to the firing range to do some research that way?
Well, certainly. I do just about. I mean, I still have a lot of contacts, obviously, in the military.
Sure.
So I can do, for instance, I did a halo scene in All Necessary Force, which is high altitude, low opening parachute jump, with a tandem bundle. Now, I'm halo qualified, but I'm not a tandem master. And so I wrote the scene, and then I contacted a buddy of mine who is a tandem master, and within one paragraph, he said, "You got this all wrong."
And so then he helps you fix it.
Yeah, he helps me write it out. I have a dive scene, same thing. You know, I'm PADI certified, but I'm not a combat diver with a LAR-5. So I said, how hard could it be to write this scene? I know how to scuba dive. And I wrote that scene, and they're like, no, doesn't work that way.
Well, one of the things I found interesting in doing some research on you was, you have this wonderful blog, and this past summer we had quite some concern about Jade Helm here in Texas.
Yeah.
And you wrote, I think, a very rational, smart response to people's irrational fears concerning Jade Helm. And I wanted you, even though it doesn't have to do with the book that we're going to talk about in a minute, I wanted to take the time for our fellow Texans for you to explain why you found that so ridiculous.
Well, actually what happened, my family still lives in Texas, and I got a text from my sister that said, what's going on with Jade Helm? They're coming to take all our guns. And I was like, what in the world are you talking about? Why are you texting me that? And so I Googled Jade Helm, and when it came up, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Because we do those kind of exercises all the time. Why this one blew up, I have no idea. But it was turned into such a convoluted mess. I've done exercises. What really surprised me the most, which I actually should have put in the blog, was everybody was upset that Texas was labeled enemy territory, as if that was some kind of huge thing, when in fact, USASOC, the Special Operations Command, looked at the United States and said, where do we have the most freedom of maneuver? Where can we do the most training? Where do they love us the most? Well, they love us in Texas the most. Okay, we'll make that enemy territory, because a friendly territory, all we're going to be doing is logistics. So that'll be California, because they don't let us do anything over there. But Texas will let us train. And then we make that enemy, because that's where the battlefield's going to be. That's where all the fighting, the notional fighting's going to go on.
Right.
And the next thing you know, everybody's like, they're calling us the enemy. I'm like, come on, man, that's a compliment.
And the other thing you point out that I thought was very well explained was you found it absolutely ironic that some of the great warriors come from Texas, and yet you said, why would people think these great warriors would suddenly turn on Texas?
Right. Why would they lose their moral compass? I mean, actually, believe it or not, Texas is the #1 producer of military people in the nation. Out of all the states, they come from Texas. I mean, of course, we have, all the famous Texans, Marcus Luttrell, all those guys.
Right.
And that's who was training there, special operations guys. So how can you say that this guy is, put him on a pedestal and then say, but the guy he trained with is out to take our guns?
Yeah.
It just made no sense to me.
Has that been true a long time, that Texas has been the #1 provider of soldiers?
It has. It fluctuates, but I mean, one part of it obviously is Texas is a very large state,
right?
And the South produces more soldiers than anybody anyway. But Texas consistently leads the nation.
But we weren't always. We were the largest, second largest state in land, but we were not the most populous until
that's
recently.
True. That's true.
We just eclipsed New York, I think, 3 or 4 years ago in total population. But boy, we are growing now. You must be surprised when you come back as to how.
Oh yeah, when I left, Woodlands was a neighborhood. Now it's a city.
Oh yeah.
I grew up on a farm in Texas, and now that's a bunch of houses. And actually, I'm in Plano, Texas right now, and my in-laws live here. My wife's family's from Dallas, and when I first visited them, it was nothing but farmland. And they live in McKinney, actually, which is, I think, it still ranks up there as either 1 or 2 fastest-growing regions of the nation.
Yeah.
And it's nothing but houses now.
I saw something just yesterday that said that the #1 job source in Texas is Plano. If you want a job, go to Plano.
Yeah, that didn't surprise me.
Really? And then I guess, I spent a lot of time around Dallas when I was a kid, and it used to be a 40-mile drive through the country to get to Denton. And now it's just city all the way. And it used to be, let's go back to Houston, used to be a long drive up to Conroe through country, and now it's largely populated all the way, right?
Yeah, actually, what I tell people is, I used to live in this, they used to call it Corn Row, Hicksville, and now it's a suburb of Houston.
Yeah. Well, you live now in Carolina?
Yeah, Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay, great. Now, let's go to a little more biography here. So you went to UT Austin, the bastion of liberalism, but escaped. And then you served 20 years in the military?
I did, close to 22.
Okay, and about roughly a third of that was with Delta Force?
Yeah, I guess that's right.
And then you retired and went to teach at the Citadel?
No, actually, my last assignment was teaching at the Citadel. I left the Special Mission Unit at Fort Bragg and went down to teach as a professor of military science at Citadel. Basically, it was supposed to be a break between deployments. We were gone all the time. And I got down there. I always wanted to write a book. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. I mean, teaching is nothing like being in a special mission unit.
I'm sure.
And so I thought I'd write a book. And I did. I thought it'd sit on the bedside table, and instead it sold, and my editor said, "Can you write a second book?" I said, "I think I can." And then I came out on the promotion list for colonel, and I had a choice to make. Do I accept the promotion and go back into the fight, or do I retire and see if I can make writing a career? And I chose to retire.
Well, with the first book, how long did it take you to write the first book, for instance?
The first one probably took, all told, it took me probably 6 months to, what I would say with air quotes, write the book. Then it took probably a year and a half to get that thing worthy of publication.
Okay. I was interviewing a couple of months ago Forsyth, who wrote The Day of the Jackal, and that's a great book. Forsyth was one of the first of these kind of, I guess he kind of launched the genre in some sense of the military thriller, assassination thrillers. Not quite the same thing that you're doing, but it has some of the same elements of intrigue and suspense and all that. And I asked him, the same question: how did you come to write, your book? And a little different from yours, because he was a journalist and he had covered World War II, and he went. He said he was out of a job and he had nothing to do. He was starving, and he wrote the book while sleeping on his friend's couch. And he said he wrote the book in about 2 months. Wrote.
I think Dogs of War is his best book.
Yes. But that was his tendency, he had a very strong work ethic in terms of writing, and it made me think as I was reading about you that you're similar in the sense that it's been 2011 was your first publication, right?
Yes.
And so you have 9 books in this series and 2 more to come out this year?
Yeah, well, one of them just came out, The Forgotten Soldier.
Right.
And I'm halfway through the other one, which is coming out in July.
But I saw the publication schedule, and you have, of course you know, but I read it as 2 more this year. In any case, it's a Stephen King-like production schedule. You are prolific, so you must.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of a victim of my own circumstances. When I retired from the military, I had to do a lot of security contracting because I still have to feed my family. And I would look at the publication date. So you owe a book in December. I looked at my schedule and said, well, I'm going to be gone from July till January. I've got to get the book in July. So I would turn it in. And, of course, the publisher would do cheetah flips because I got it in 6 months early. But then I would start screaming at them and say, get the book out, because I'm writing current events. And current events, the problem with them, they're current.
Yes.
It could alter the trajectory of the book. For instance, in One Rough Man, if we'd have gone to war with Iran, which we were rattling sabers at that time, it would make the book irrelevant. And so I kept saying, get the book out, and I did 3 books like that, doing 1 book a year, and my editor said, okay, smarty pants, we'll go a book every 6 months if you want to do that.
Well, what is your work schedule in terms of writing? Are you a writer who, like, let's say, the great Texas writer McMurtry, he writes without fail 4 hours a day, typically in the morning. Do you do that? Do you have a kind of unalterable schedule?
No, I don't. I try to. I've had no instruction on writing. My instruction has been reading. So I have nuances of tone and pace and things like that, but I don't know how to write anything. And I found that, so I did research. You've got to crank out X amount of words a day and keep at it and discipline and all this. and I found I wrote crap when I did that. So I like to say that, writing is more than typing. I'm always writing.
Right.
I'm writing when I'm doing physical training. I'm writing when I'm in the shower. I'm writing when I'm driving. And it's got to percolate in my head until it feels right. And then I'll knock out, for instance, for The Forgotten Soldier, I wrote the ending of that book. And when I say ending, I'm talking 20,000 words. I did 5,000 to 7,000 words a night. Stayed up all night and finished it in a week.
My goodness.
But if I had tried to do 1,000 words a day at a steady pace, it would have been crap.
But it's constructed in your head, and you just eventually come to where it's time to give birth.
That's basically, that's exactly right. That's a good way of looking at it. It's and I have a journal I carry with me everywhere I go, and I write notes in it, longhand. But until it coalesces in my head, till I have a peak point where I say I've got to get that on the page. Then I'm in a break point in Ghosts of War, the book that's coming out. In my head, I've probably got 15,000 words that I could whack out, except I'm on the book tour. So I'm ready to get back to it.
I'm reminded of James Dickey, who was a great, he wrote Deliverance, and he said that he kept, of course this is a long time ago in the 60s, he kept a typewriter in every room and in the garage, and anytime that brilliance would strike him, he would just go over there and type, and he would do it.
That's kind of, actually, in the modern day era, that's what I do. I have I don't have a desktop computer. I've got a Mac Air.
Okay.
And I bought a Mac Air because it's light. And the reason it's light is because I carry it everywhere I go.
And you also travel to a lot of these locations you want to write about to get the ambiance of it, right? Yeah,
I have to. There's probably 50%. When I travel overseas, there's 50% that I know I need to find, and there's 50% that I have no idea, but it's going to find me. For The Forgotten Soldier, I went to Crete and to Germany, to Greece, and for Ghosts of War, I just came back from Poland, Slovakia, and Austria. The Widow Strike, I went to Hong Kong, Macau, Thailand, Singapore. So I want to get the feel of the ground.
Can you give me an example of authenticity that you discovered on these journeys?
Yeah, for The Forgotten Soldier, there was a scene where I knew that Guy George, the guy that's going rogue, he's going to get found and he's going to get chased. I just know there's going to be a scene like that. And so when I hit the ground there, usually what I'll do is you talk to a cab driver or talk to somebody's local. And you find somebody who's willing to, I can hire you. For instance, I was in Dubai, I paid a guy $50 to drive me around for 3 days.
Wow.
And then I'll ask the guy, what I need here is, I need to know where the Somalis stay. I need to know where whatever the scene is. In this case, I had to know, I needed a scene where it would be, he's going to get chased, but it's got to be chased where it's, it's unique. And I was running around Athens, Greece, and I found this one area that had a bunch of strip clubs, and I said, well, I'm going to use that because that's where the seedy people are. How do I connect that to something else? And we had dinner at this restaurant, which was a fabulously pretty area. It was all pedestrian, so I knew there wouldn't be any problem with trying to say, why didn't you jump into a cab? Because there are no cabs. And then I retraced his steps. Okay, here's where he's going to go. Very
cool. Athens is a beautiful city. I mean, it's a little run down, but I was there about 10 years ago.
I was actually surprised at the metro. Man, that thing is spotless.
Yes, there are surprises like that. And then when I went from Greece, the cradle of Western civilization, over to Turkey, to Istanbul. Istanbul was the greater surprise because it was really more modern than Athens.
Yeah, actually, the Insider Thread has a lot. I went from Istanbul to Plovdiv, Bulgaria, ran around there, and I was the same way.
Okay, so I've been through all this to demonstrate your exceptional credibility for writing the series that you write. And so let's talk about this, Your Forgotten Soldier, which is a riveting read. One of my favorite reviews of it was on Amazon by a reader whose review was this: wow, just wow. That's the shortest, most beautiful review. He obviously loved it.
Love those.
But all the reviews from Publishers Weekly and others are glowing about you sustaining a high level of suspense here, and a little bit of a diversion from a departure from the Pike Logan series in general, because, well, I don't want to be a spoiler, so I don't want to get into it. I'll just say, I'll let you explain, how is this a departure?
It's a darker story. Actually, when I used to be in special operations, and we had to work through a myriad of issues just to get to do anything. There's a lot of laws, there's a lot of oversight. Title 50, Title 10, whether it's CIA or special operations. And we used to always fantasize about, wouldn't it be neat if we had a task force that could just do stuff? And so I created a fictional task force in my series. And that's where Pike Logan works for. Every time I wrote a story, though, sometimes Pike goes off the reservation, but he's always saving the day because I'm writing a story. Of course he's going to save the day. And but in the back of my head, having worked that real world, I thought to myself, it would take one guy for this thing to go bad. I mean, there's not a whole lot of control over this organization. And that theme has been in my head for a long time, and I decided to explore it in depth in The Forgotten Soldier.
And in this one, we have one of the team members goes rogue, and he has to find him and solve the problem. Yeah,
he's doing what he thinks is for the right. I mean, it's a big question of what is right.
Yes.
When does the greater good become the wrong thing? And so he's chasing bad guys, which everybody knows are bad, but if he removes those guys from the board, he's going to impact international systems that will cause greater harm than good. And so Pike Logan has now been tasked to, hey, this guy's gone off the reservation, you need to bring him in. And Pike has no small amount of sympathy for what he's doing. It's like that guy's doing what I think is the right thing, but on the other hand, I see what the administration's saying. So it's a moral dilemma that permeates the book.
Well, that's what I like about it. It's got this realistic struggle, a moralistic struggle about, I have to deal with this guy, but I kind of, I empathize with what he's going through, and because of his brother and all.
And actually, he gets, when he finally confronts Guy George, the guy that's gone off the reservation, Guy George throws back in his face things I've written in the past. You did this exact same thing. And Pike's answer is, yeah, but when I did it, it turned out right. So he's actually using Pike's own actions against him.
And do you sometimes, in a situation like that, write yourself into a corner?
Oh, yeah, I do it. Every single book, where I write something and I'm thinking, this is the neatest thing ever, I'm going to do this scene. And I get through the scene and I'm like, now what are you going to do?
Where do I go from here?
And I have to figure out, for instance, in The Forgotten Soldier, since he's gone off the reservation, he doesn't have any task force kit, which we have a lot of specialized, unique ability to track individuals and things like that, just technology. Well, he's going to have to work off commercial off-the-shelf stuff. And so I had to do the research on, okay, if we were going to find that guy, he's got his own passport, he's got everything else, how are we going to find that guy? And I started doing research on standard apps that are on your phone, and I was amazed to see how many applications that you use on a daily basis are tracking you at any given time. And so I chose one of those apps to track Guy George.
Yeah, I was surprised to find that the terrorists, ISIS terrorists, use game apps like Xbox and others to have their secret meetings. Right. I mean, the applications, the technology now. When I first came into the special operations world, it was a unique thing where the government has this widgets that the Q from James Bond, and the regular people had nothing. Now it's almost merged, where it's no longer even financially responsible to try to develop your own stuff. Just go off to the street and buy something. Well, with all of your thinking about these matters, what do you think? Just give you a political question. What do you think we should be doing about the ISIS domestic threat? Let's say, what should we be doing differently? ISIS is a formidable problem. It's what I don't like are people that you see it on TV all the time, where they do soundbite strategy, I call it. For instance, they say we should arm the Kurds. The Kurds are the only ones that are helping. Well, that's true. Let's arm the Kurds. But in my mind, it's like looking at the World War II and saying, "Oh, we won the Battle of Midway with aircraft carriers. We need more aircraft carriers." Well, sure, that'll work. That's a good thing. Get more aircraft carriers, but that's not going to do a damn thing for Germany. And the Kurds, while they'll help in their area, they're not going to liberate Raqqa. They're not going to do anything in Ramadi, which we just got Ramadi back. But it's a very complex solution. But the bottom line, at the end of the day, they cannot sustain a state. We cannot allow that to happen. It is what is feeding the jihadist fervor, is because they have a state. They're calling a state. Take their terrain and they end up being a jihadi group like anywhere else, and then there's a competing interest with other jihadi groups. They're all trying to get members. You lose the focus of ISIS, and I think
time is not on our side. We can sit here all day long and say it'll take forever to do this, and when it's done, we'll all be happy. But the world turns. It's not a static answer. There's not a zero-sum game. That every day we wait, they grow stronger.
Should we put boots on the ground, or more? I know we have people there.
I think we should put more boots on the ground, with a caveat of we should not do an invasion with 100,000 guys to go in there and root them out. That'll exacerbate the problem. I mean, the very reason I was talking about the Kurds is you don't want the Kurds to liberate Raqqa. As soon as the Kurds start moving south down there, it's going to be a Kurdish fight. It's not going to be, and the Sunnis will say, oh, they're out to get us. And the same thing will happen with us. We should have more integration. That one thing that people miss, they all look at the kinetic option, and they say that the United States can kinetically hit all these guys and kill them. We need more Americans over there. They're missing the bigger thing we bring to the fight, which is a leavening force, which is preventing atrocities, which is preventing the Shia and Sunnis from going at each other. It's as much as people may not like it, the Sunnis inside Al-Anbar province trust us more than they do the Shia.
Really?
And that's what we bring to the fight, is a moral compass that allows the fight to continue.
Well, with our long history there, and you've been involved with it for a long time, where is the American military weak? And Donald Trump talks a lot about wanting to put a lot of money into rebuilding the military. Whether you agree with him or not, if you were going to rebuild the military, where would you put the money in the effort?
Well, I'll tell you right off the bat, this is a true fact, that the American military spends more money than the next top 10 countries combined. And that includes China and Russia. I mean, combined, we put more money in the military. Having said that, the main focus right now is on training. Sequestration's killing us. You're not allowed to train. You have these programs that you're contractually obligated to continue. So 10 years ago, we said we're building the next long-range strike bomber. Well, that is a huge, enormous suck fest of money. You can't get out of that. So when sequestration hits, you're contractually obligated to continue this program. Where are you going to take the money from? Well, tell that guy he's only got 6 bullets to shoot this year. That's something you can affect. And that's the problem we have right now. And I'm not sure what Donald Trump means by rebuilding the military, because Lord knows we're the most powerful military in the world. But the day-to-day operations of training, of preparing for war, is what's getting hurt, because that's the only thing that the Department of Defense can affect. When you say, I'm going to cut your budget, I have $10 to spend, 8 of them I've already contractually obligated to build this new widget, the F-35 or whatever. 2 of them I know I can maintain my force with and be prepared for war. Then you say, I'm cutting your budget. The only thing you can affect is taking the $2 to prepare for war.
So most of it's about re-engineering the budget that's already there.
That's an impossible task.
Yeah, I'm sure. Be easier to beat ISIS, probably, right?
Exactly.
Well, Brad, thank you for joining us today. The book is The Forgotten Soldier, and as you can tell from the conversation that Brad and I have had, he is uniquely qualified to write this sort of novel, and you will enjoy it because of its military authenticity. I suppose, Brad, before I let you go, that you have a big following in the military. I'm sure you have a lot of readers there, right?
I do, but surprisingly, they're not the majority. I try to write the books where you don't have to be in the military. I don't do a lot of acronyms and things like that. There's a few of them that are in there, but they're explained in the flow of the action. And I don't spend a lot of time describing weapon systems, ad nauseum. If there's a reason for me to describe a weapon, it's because it has something to do with the plot. If it's not, then the guy's holding a pistol. I don't need to go into all the details.
But I think you do a good job of informing the layman about the unique dimensions of something so that we can appreciate it. So that's well done.
What I try to do.
Again, the book is The Forgotten Soldier by Brad Taylor. Pick it up. It's a really, really good read. For Good Books Radio, I'm Dr. W.F. Strong. Thanks for joining us today. Here's hoping that all your books are good reads.